All right, it looks like we've got a bunch of people joining us on the live stream, so we're happy to have everybody who's here with us today. And we're also happy to have everybody who's joining us remotely. Just as a kind of a quick reminder, we are recording this part of the day, so that's started. I'll tell you a little bit more about that later. I am going to right now turn it over to Jennifer Haverkamp, the Graham Family Director of the Graham Sustainability Institute, who's also a professor of practice at the Ford School of Public Policy and the Law School, to kick things off this afternoon. Jennifer.
Thank you, Maggie, and welcome everyone to what we believe will be a very productive and we hope also fun afternoon. As Maggie said, I'm Jennifer Haverkamp. I'm the Graham Family Director of the Graham Sustainability Institute. For those of you who don't know Graham, and some of you know us very well, we've been around for about 15 years, and our job is basically to serve as a boundary-spanning organization to link the expertise and research needs of our faculty and the university community with those of your colleagues, but also practitioners and partners outside of UM. So interdisciplinary and in co-creation of knowledge with external partners often. We are based in the office of the provost, and that's very intentional as a sign of showing that we work with all the schools and colleges. We're not part of one particular school and college. And while we take a broad view of sustainability and have a lot of different initiatives in our portfolio, through a strategic planning process 2 years ago, we've especially narrowed our focus to work in the areas of climate change, water resources, leadership development, and policy integration. And these priorities guide our work. The program that we're here under the auspices of today is our Carbon Neutrality Acceleration Program, also known as CNAP. And this program came from a $5 million anonymous gift that was to the university, which the president asked Graham to set up this faculty research program to support carbon neutrality research at U of M. And basically it provides funding and support for faculty, again, across all the different schools and colleges of the university to pursue innovative, actionable carbon neutrality research and to promote connections among researchers and stakeholders. And our emphasis is on high-impact faculty research that will dramatically reduce net carbon emissions, thus the name Carbon Neutrality. There's a lot of great work already happening here at the University of Michigan, and so we want this program to complement it and amplify it through the work of individual faculty as well as the institutes, programs, and schools. There are a lot of elements here to work with and to build on. But we are also very intentionally directing this program to also support faculty who are new to carbon neutrality. So if any of you in this room or on the live stream are in that category, we especially welcome you because this program's goal is to amplify and expand our impact in this area. Through CNAP, we're particularly interested in supporting work that produces new insights through interdisciplinary collaborations and that yields novel interventions that are co-created by scholars and practitioners. And we've gathered you all here today, to answer your questions about our CNAP RFPs, to learn about additional funding opportunities and campus resources that can help take your work even further, and for the opportunity which has been lacking often during COVID, which is to meet other researchers working on carbon neutrality issues and have a chance to engage with each other and network. So with that, I thank you again for being here today, your interest in this topic. I hand you back over to Maggie. Welcome again.
Thanks, Jennifer. Just want to echo Jennifer's enthusiasm to have people together. It was exciting to hear, I haven't seen you in a long time, when everyone was getting ready to start the event. So my name is Maggie Allan. I'm a program manager at the Graham Sustainability Institute. I manage our CNAP program as well as our Catalyst Grant program and help provide collaborative research support services to faculty. Today, we're going to jump right into a CNAP RFP overview. I hope you came with questions because this is your chance to ask them. And for those on the live stream, please chat your questions. We'll have the opportunity to answer those as well. We're going to pause the live stream around 1:45, and we've got a little bit under 30 minutes for some networking. I'll talk to you about the details of that when we get there. We'll take a short break, and then we'll resume at 2:20 when we restart the live stream for an exciting panel of different carbon neutrality funders and campus research resources. So we have folks from DOE, NSF, and the Sloan Foundation, as well as some great partners here on campus who can talk about their opportunities towards which you could be working with CNAP funding. You could pursue those outside of CNAP funding. I think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I'm really excited to highlight that. As I mentioned, and then at the end of that, we'll have the room for about 30 more minutes. So if there are any questions or conversations that you want to continue, we'll be here to answer those. The recording is on, so just folks should remember that. The RFP overview and Q&A section will be posted to the Graham website along with the recording of the funder panel, along with slides. And anybody who's registered for the event will get a follow-up email when those are available for you. Also, just a heads up, Fatima is here for the Graham Institute with a camera. She's taking pictures. If, especially during the networking part of the event, you don't want your picture taken, just tell her, and she will keep you out of the frame. Coffee, snacks, water are available anytime. Bathrooms are out the door to the left, gender-inclusive bathroom downstairs, and I think that covers all of the housekeeping items. So let's get into our funding opportunity. Let's see, I'm going to give you a quick overview of both types of grants, some proposal tips, and then we'll have time for questions. We made some changes to the funding opportunity from when we released an RFP in 2020, but the goal is the same: to amplify and expand the university's research impact and fuel ideas that are necessary to combat climate change. So we're really focused on these sort of big ideas. We want you to think big with these proposals. We have two distinct funding levels. I'm going to start with the similarities between them, and then I'll get into some of the differences. So as a quick reminder, level one, these are $25,000 to $50,000 one-year grants. Level two are $100,000 to $200,000 two-year grants. Across both levels of grants, all faculty from all three campuses are eligible. Do note that an individual can only be a PI on one proposal. And that's including both levels. So pick level one or pick level two, whichever one's best for you. But there is no limit on the number of proposals an individual can be a co-investigator on. So we don't want folks to feel like they can't collaborate. It's just whatever you want to be a PI on, you got to pick one. The grants can be used at both levels for discrete research projects and or research efforts that help position a team to be more competitive for external funding. Often those two go hand in hand, not necessarily, but those are the eligible objectives. There are no limits on the topics as long as they address a critical barrier or opportunity to achieve carbon neutrality, and I'll talk about that a little bit more. Among the fundable projects emerging through the review process, we will prioritize projects that span technical and social sciences and those that include junior faculty among the PI leadership. At both grant levels, we are interested in teams that can articulate the pathways to real-world solutions and the scale and magnitude of that impact. Again, I'll talk a little bit more about that. The funds need to be used for work that is distinct from prior or existing research projects. I know sometimes that's a little fuzzy, but the idea here is we're not looking to use these funds to plug gaps. We really want you to be able to start something new or expand the work that you're doing. And across both levels of grants, we encourage external engagement with partners outside of the university to inform, conduct, or disseminate the research. It's not required. It's something that we encourage, and I think it helps strengthen teams in terms of making an argument for how they're thinking about a pathway to impact. This table summarizes the two grant levels, so I'll walk through that quickly. Again, level one, $25,000 to $50,000 for a year. We anticipate making about 5 to 7 awards. The level two grants are $100,000 to $200,000 for 2 years, and we anticipate making about 4 to 6 awards. For both levels of grants, We're encouraging interdisciplinary work, so that's something that's prioritized for level 1 grants, but we're still accepting proposals from sole PI projects and teams that are sort of more narrowly collaborative. With the level 2 grants, however, we are requiring that the teams be interdisciplinary and include representation from at least 2 of them units. So not departments, but units. We do have an exception for LS&A. I'll flesh that out in a FAQ document if you're, but we'd want to see representation across the 3 divisions. So we kind of treat those separately, and it looks like somebody had that question, so I'm glad they mentioned that. So some of the other ways to think about differences between these 2 and kind of where you might fit best is the level 1 grants have a shorter application and review timeline, so they're really for projects that are ready to go as is. We're looking for LOIs next Wednesday. Don't get stressed. They are very short project descriptions with your team, just to give us a heads up about how many proposals we can expect and the topics, and help us guide our reviewer recruitment. Full proposals on June 3rd. For level 2, it's a longer 2-stage application process with pre-proposals and then invitation to full proposal. And the idea there is to provide more time and feedback for the teams invited to full proposal so that they can refine and strengthen their ideas. For level 2, we're looking for pre-proposals by June 3rd. We'll provide feedback by August about who's invited to full proposal, and then full proposals in October. We'll make award announcements early in the winter term, probably February, and then funding will be available to start April 1st. So a couple tips. Read the RFPs. I actually feel better. I was talking to somebody about I feel so bad that they're so long, and I was reminded that a lot of RFPs are 80 pages, and so I shouldn't feel bad about these being only 10. But we are really specific about the narrative requirements and the review criteria, and these vary a little bit depending on the level of the grant and the stage that you're at, so just a heads up, take a look at those. Hopefully that helps you prepare the materials that you submit. Across both levels, it's important that you make a case to those outside of your discipline. You'll have reviewers who are inside your discipline and outside, and then in the case of level 2 grants, we'll also have some folks outside of academia on the review panel, so it'll be a multi-sector review, so just keep that in mind. And then for both, it's also important to include clear research questions and activities. So even if you're using this as a positioning project to position a team to pursue additional funding, the grants cannot be used solely for sort of planning and travel purposes, although those can certainly be part of the scope of work that you propose. So in terms of some of the sort of specific prompts within the narrative, and these apply across the grants. In the problem statement and objective, we're looking for something that's focused. In particular, let us know about that critical barrier or opportunity that you're addressing. So say you're interested in thermal energy storage, tell us why thermal energy storage is really important, but also tell us why the particular thing that you are working on is this is a critical barrier or opportunity, and be really specific about that. We also want to know what prior university investment, expertise, or activities the work builds on. To be clear, we value both sort of new work as well as next level work from existing teams. This information, though, helps us sort of demonstrate that this is a significant and not just an incremental advancement in the work, as well as need for internal funding. In the approach section, obviously, your research questions, your methods, but something I want to emphasize here is the importance of highlighting the interdisciplinarity and the novelty and innovation in your approach. We ask you to list your outputs and outcomes separately, and clearly we define those in the RFP. Let me know if you have any questions. I think the important part here is to connect the dots. So those outputs and outcomes should relate to the critical barrier opportunity that you outlined in your problem statement. The outcomes should flow from the outputs. So I'm telling you to think big, but I'm also going to tell you here to be realistic. And so when it comes to outcomes in this section, we're thinking more short, near-term outcomes. When it comes to the big impacts, we can talk about that in the next section. In the outputs and outcomes, if you're using the proposal to position your team to pursue external funding, we want you to be specific about those funding opportunities, and we have a couple prompts in the RFP telling you exactly what we're looking for. In terms of the big impacts, we have a section where we really want teams to articulate how the research can inform real-world net emission reductions. So there are two sort of main points here. The first is kind of what is the pathway to the solution? So is this something that you're looking at private markets and products? Is this something where the pathway involves policies and rules and management? Or is it about individual behavior change? Be really specific about that. We also want you, to the extent possible, to articulate the significance and magnitude of the impact. So for some projects, that might be a quantitative estimate of emissions avoided or reduced. For others, it might be a description of scalability or transferability. And for others, it might be why this is particularly important for a certain population or a sector. But to the extent that you can do that, sell us on why this is a really big idea. In the team section, don't recap your CVs. We've got them in the appendix. So let us know how the collaboration is greater than the sum of the disciplinary parts. We also, in level 2 proposals, ask a little bit more information about sort of team processes to really get at that collaboration element. And for any project that involves engagement, we have prompts built into the narrative requirements to get at sort of different aspects of this, depending on whether it's a level 1 or level 2 grant. But basically, we want to know specifically who are you working with, what are their interests and needs, how does engagement with them inform the proposal that you're sharing with us and the research process itself? How will they actually use the outputs? And at the proposal stage, so full proposals level 1 or level 2, we would want to see a letter of support demonstrating their involvement and commitment. The appendices vary with the grant level and the stage. We have provided budget, timeline, and funding templates, so you can use a current and pending funding format that's acceptable to NSF and DOE, or we have one that we've made available to you. And just a heads up, because this is always a headache, we have a grant proposal approval form that requires signatures from deans and chairs. It is not the same as the path that goes through e-research. It often confuses people. I apologize for that. Next time around, I will change the name of the form, but just a heads up to leave time for some signatures from the PI's unit. In terms of budget and timeline, most expenses are eligible, but there's no IDC, no equipment over $5,000. Subawards are okay, but we have a 10% limit of the budget that can go to external academic collaborators. So if it's an engaged project and you're working with someone outside of academia, that limit doesn't apply. But for collaborations with other collaborators or other universities, there's a budget limit there. We require full budgets and narratives only at the full proposal stage, so not in your LOI and not in your pre-proposals if you're submitting for level 2. And our timelines are pretty set, but there's a little bit of flexibility. So if you have a unique situation where you want something to start a little bit later, the project's going to be a little bit shorter, just reach out to me in advance and we'll see if there's any problems. I'm not going to talk too much about the level 1 proposals because I think they're a little bit more straightforward, but just want to remind you that the LOIs due next week are brief and non-binding. They're mostly giving us a heads up. You will not receive formal feedback on an LOI, but if we look at something and there's concerns about eligibility or alignment with the funding opportunity, I'll give you a call and give you a heads up and we can talk about that. Let me see if there's... I did get a question earlier today about kind of, someone who's thinking about submitting a proposal where they would be the sole PI and kind of how to juggle some of the prioritization. So we're going to be prioritizing interdisciplinary projects and projects that include junior faculty among the PI leadership, among the fundable proposals. So I anticipate that we will be funding a mix of collaborative and sole PI projects. We'll have a better sense of what that looks like after the LOIs. So if you have any concerns, I would say submit an LOI, give me a call, and we can talk about it afterwards about what that looks like. Last one is I want to talk about the differences between the pre-proposal and the full proposal for the level 2 grants. The pre-proposal, this is your chance to sell us on the big idea, and you don't have to have all the details worked out. It's a 5-page narrative that's focused on 3 things: the societal and research significance of the issue, the value and innovation of the interdisciplinary approach. So we want to know your research questions. We want to know enough about your methods to know that your outputs are sort of feasible and reasonable, but that's not the emphasis in the pre-proposal. And then we want to know about the potential application and that magnitude and scale of impact question. The appendices are really simple: your references, CVs, current and pending support, and then some thoughts about potential reviewers. We anticipate inviting about 10 to 12 teams to submit full proposals. And at the full proposal stage, there's more emphasis on methods, feasibility, and impact. In particular, things to note at this stage, when it comes to the approach, in addition to clarifying your research questions, providing more detail about the methods, we also want to hear about adaptive mechanisms to support collaboration, potential problems and alternatives that you have in mind, how your team is going to use evaluation to make sure that it's effective and is improving its process, and be really specific about opportunities for students. And then in the pathways to application section, we want you to think a little bit more about those pathways. In particular, what are the barriers to application, and how does your approach take those barriers into consideration to enhance or expedite impact? And then we want you to tell us a little bit more about equity impacts of the work, and how the project will benefit underserved people and communities. And this is where we ask for all the appendices, that Graham proposal approval form, timeline budget, and letters of support. So with that, I am going to answer your questions. Shoot. Yeah, Andre.
By units, you mean it must be different colleges or schools. It can't be just two departments within the same college or school.
Correct. So Andre, you are asking about what we mean by units. We have hyperlinks in the RFP to the list, but you're correct. We are looking for colleges and schools, so we are really specific about what that is at U of M, including research units, what that looks like on the Dearborn campus and what that looks like on the Flint campus. But you are correct. For example, a collaboration between someone in civil engineering and mechanical engineering would not meet that requirement. Jeremy, I'm just gonna, ooh, Jean's going that way. So we'll do this one first and then you, Jeremy.
Sorry, Adam Burek, nuclear engineering. So I had a question about what does interdisciplinary mean? And also you said there's an exclusion for LSA or something like that?
Okay, I'll elaborate. So interdisciplinary, if you have concerns, I encourage you to reach out to me. I know that there are lots of arguments about what is a different discipline. So some of this, in certain instances, we're going to put it back on the team to make a case. You and I have chatted before, so I have some idea what you're thinking. And so it would be important for you to articulate why, this is not what applies to you, Adam, but for instance, an economist at C's collaborating with an economist at LS&A, we would say that meets the 2-unit requirement, but not the interdisciplinary requirement. And so, I think you can sort of extrapolate what that might look like in your case. If you have any concerns, I encourage you just to reach out directly. We also know that you are the experts in your field, and so to the extent that there's a case to be made for why something is interdisciplinary, we're gonna ask you to make that clear. In terms of LS&A, what I was trying to say is that LS&A is so large that we don't treat it as a single unit. And so across the 3 divisions, and Sarah, I'm going to look at you for this one. What is it? It's natural. Yeah, social sciences, humanities, and natural sciences. Individuals from those 3 different divisions, each of them we would consider them to represent a different unit. So it's not that LS&A doesn't count. It's just that we will count LS&A as 3 different units, depending on where faculty reside. Good. Jeremy?
So I'm going to try to state this as succinctly as possible, but in the difference between level 1 and level 2, there's differences not only in the application timeline, but when the funding availability is. And some of the projects potentially could be complex, involving multiple different units and folks doing different things. Would it be undesirable or overly complicated or viewed poorly if somehow those timelines were sequenced in a way where there was a different lead PI on things that were related but weren't focused on the same, like a level 1 thing in a related constellation of concepts focusing on something A, and then a level 2 thing with a different constellation of people in a different PI focusing on a different element of a related impact pathway, to use some language that you used?
Yeah, I guess I would say we are going to be reviewing the level 1 proposals on their own and the level 2 proposals on their own. So to the extent that there might be projects in each of those buckets that are on related issues, perhaps with similar investigators doing different things, that is not going to, we're not going to exclude proposals for that purpose. What we would want to see is that in each case, the timeline for the project makes sense, the scope makes sense for the budget. They're either ready to go or they need a little bit more time to, in the case of level 1, they're ready to go this fall. We recognize, people might want money this fall so they can be positioned in the winter to go after something, whereas another team, there's more time. Maybe what they're pursuing afterwards is a reoccurring funding opportunity, and it really makes sense for them to start in 2023 and continue that work for 2 years. So did that answer your question?
And embedded in that answer was the fact that each should stand on their own.
Yes.
And be logical, independent.
Yes, that each should stand on their own and be logical, independent of each other for folks on the live stream. Yes, that's a great question. I'm going to turn to you, Sarah. Anybody online have some questions for me? Okay, I'm trying to think about what else I have been asked recently that I haven't covered. I will have an FAQ document available on the website. So as we receive additional questions, I will continue to populate that, and that'll be available for everybody. But Brian, go for it.
Yeah, hi Maggie. So we spoke briefly about this, but single PIs, or not even single PIs, but as the PI, can you submit an L1 and an L2? Well, for example, you put an LOI in for the L1, but you put a letter of intent in for L2, but you may not get selected. So how do we plan that if we have 2 ideas?
I'm about to make sure I'm answering this right.
Thank you.
Our intention is for you to pick the level that makes the most sense for the work that you want to do and to prioritize the one that you think is the best and strongest fit. So I recognize that for the LOI, part of the issue is at the LOI phase, I guess if you have any concerns that your LOI might not fit with level 1, submit that, and I can tell you, that doesn't fit. Brian, don't submit a proposal. And then there would still be time for you to submit a pre-proposal due June 3rd for level 2. But presumably you're not going to waste your time putting together an LOI for something that you think is way off base. And everybody here can call me or email me, and I'm happy to talk with them to hopefully avoid those situations. So my advice would be pick the one that you feel like is the best fit and the strongest, and go from there. Just one.
I have an audience question. Sorry. Does
Yeah.
this work?
Do share.
So virtually, we have a question. For current CNAP awardees, will the likelihood of success be influenced?
For current CNAP awardees, PIs on those projects are not eligible to submit proposals as a PI. Their collaborators are eligible to submit proposals for level 1 or level 2 as PIs, and PIs on current projects could be collaborators on this next round. But for the 7 PIs who were awarded CNAP funds back in 2020, they are not eligible to submit a proposal as a PI at this time.
Great, thank you.
We have another question?
Thank you, Manya here. On that, if we apply this year as a PI on a level 1, can we apply next year or next round as a PI in level 2?
I would love to say yes, but that would require our anonymous donor to give us more money. So we have some additional funding available, and there will probably be another round of funding at the end, probably a smaller round of funding. So we have about $1.25 million that we can award this round for level 1 and level 2 projects combined. What we do in the next year and a half with some of the funds sort of remaining from the gift is to be determined. So there will probably be another opportunity, but I can't guarantee what that looks like.
I have another virtual question.
Great.
Is it possible to get redirected upwards or downwards in terms of levels based on the concept and team after LOIs are submitted?
No, we're treating the 2 application pathways as distinct. So if you have questions about whether your project idea is better as a level 1 or level 2, I encourage you to reach out. Some of this is the difference is, I mean, the uses are pretty similar. The levels partly are just an acknowledgement of, it costs really different amounts for people in different units to support their students or to do their work. And so we really encourage you to kind of right size your idea and your project to the appropriate level in terms of kind of the timeline and how ready the idea is and how big you want to go with it. Oh, we've got another one.
So,
Yeah.
so I had a question kind of regarding timeline and this grant proposal approval form. So that's not required for pre-proposals, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
The
So that
Graham
adds a week.
proposal approval form is not required at the LOI stage for level 1, nor is it required at the pre-proposal stage for level 2.
Okay.
It's just at the full proposal stage.
I've got another one while we wait for the microphone to move over. But who will be the reviewers? Are they experts or non-experts or a combination of both?
Combination of both. So the level 1 proposals are going to be reviewed by a mix of internally with some Graham staff, U of M faculty members, and additional external experts. For each proposal, the reviewers assigned to your proposal will include somebody who is in your discipline, in your field, but probably other reviewers who are bringing a different perspective to it. So that's why it's really important to remember that you're going to have a mix of expertise looking at your proposals. For level 2, we have a review panel of folks internal and external to U of M and outside of academia. So they're going to be looking at the pre-proposals. This is why it's really important to sort of sell that interdisciplinary multi-sector group on the importance of your idea. Teams that are invited to submit a full proposal, those full proposals will go out to additional technical reviewers in your field and will be reviewed by the panelists who will be reconvening, and they'll consider all of those reviews together.
Can we submit a proposal? If you're preparing a proposal for NSF and it's not fully ready, can we submit a easier version of that to you, and then in a year for level 2, and in a year while we are doing this research, submit that to NSF?
Yes, but not exactly. So I think it would be really important in the level 2 CNAP application to explain the funding opportunity that you're pursuing and make sure these timelines make sense to the reviewer. So we'd want to see kind of how all of these pieces come together. We wouldn't want to prevent a team from pursuing additional funding opportunities before their grant runs up, but we'd want to understand how those timelines align so you can make the case of kind of what the impact is of the internal CNAP award and why you would already be positioned to do that work. So that does raise the point that if it's a $100,000 to $200,000 grant for up to 2 years. So you can also think about if you have a shorter timeline that's starting in April of 2023 when the funding becomes available, maybe you only need a year's worth of work and you need $150,000. And so it's up to you to kind of right size the time frame and the amount and then make that case clear to the reviewers.
Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to use that to catch my breath and drink some water. All right. I imagine that some more ideas will pop up during the day, and so don't hesitate to find me later on in the room or to reach out via email. This email goes to me, the graham-cnap@umich.edu goes to me and my colleagues, and we'll get back to you and answer your questions. So hopefully that was helpful and kind of clarified a few things. And we will be adding those to our FAQ document, so you'll see those as well. So with that, we're going to go ahead and pause the live stream, and we're going to give everybody here an opportunity to do a little bit of networking.